Hello and welcome back to Ek Mulakat. As you may know, we bring a different guest to you each time. Someone who is very prominent in his or her own field. Our guest today is one such special eminent personality, Mr. S Narendra. Mr. Narendra has been a communications advisor to 4 Prime Ministers of India and also a spokesperson for the government of India. Mr. Narendra, Om Shanti.
Om Shanti.
And I'd like to warmly welcome you to our Godlywood studio here at Brahmakumaris headquarters in Mount Abu, Rajasthan.
Thank you very much.
I would like to start with your journey in journalism. It first started in Mysore.
Yes.
What was it like? I mean, what was the decisive point that got you into journalism?
Well, Mysore University was the first one in India to introduce a journalism program at the bachelor's level.
Okay.
Somehow I was, right from school days, I used to write articles, etc. That attracted me to journalism. Also the professional program. But the journalism of those days was entirely different, and even teaching was mostly theoretical.
Okay. No practical.
No practical experience was there.
Okay.
So more or less we had to teach ourselves, read books, then do our own kind of learning. Even the teachers were not trained in journalism.
Okay.
But still, it was a very, very interesting program in the sense that I was interested in current affairs, politics, and economic development. So I thought, if one pursued journalism, development of the country through the media, that's how I joined the journalism program.
Media does play a very big role in bringing a country forward. You know, it can make a country to a great extent by its work, by the nature of its work. You have also been the information advisor and a spokesperson to 4 prime ministers.
Yes.
And could you relate your experiences, what it has been like on that journey?
Well, in the civil service, I joined the Indian Information Service and gradually gained experience. And I was fortunate to serve in the capacity of the spokesperson of the Government of India, information advisor to 4 prime ministers. The most interesting aspect is I served under different political dispensations.
Okay.
There was the Congress government, there was the non-Congress government, there was Bharatiya Janata Party government.
Okay.
And I was fortunate. All the 4 prime ministers put their trust in me. And in civil service, we are neutral politically. And whichever government comes, we have to serve that. And I am privileged to serve 4 prime ministers, eminent people in India's economic and political journey. The first prime minister sort of information was P.V. Narasimha Rao.
Okay.
He's really the father of economic reforms in the country. He came into power in 1991, opened up the economy very gradually, and it was the most difficult period in India because firstly, we had almost an economic crisis. India was about to default on its repayment of loans and interest. Even gold had been pledged to the Bank of England.
Oh my God. Okay.
And when the economic reforms were introduced, he had to change the entire economic philosophy of the country. For about really 30 odd years, India had taken the path of socialistic development.
Okay.
It is not only the media, even his own party was somewhat taken aback.
Okay.
And the political leaders down the line, right at the district level, felt that the Prime Minister is almost changing the course set by the first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Mrs. Indira Gandhi. So how to politically sell that was a very, very difficult challenge. And fortunately, I was in a position where I could give the government a whole communication plan, extremely complex job. Certain things had to be done above board, certain things had to be done below the ground.
Right. What was the journey like with some of the other prime ministers?
An entirely different thinking to the government. For instance, the Congress was in power, therefore we worked with the Congress government throughout. When a non-Congress dispensation came, they changed some of the policies, some of the rhetoric changes, and you had to, one, adjust to the change, But at the same time, certain continuity has to be maintained. It is the continuity with change. It is not as if it is 100% reverse of policies.
Right. It's like a continuum.
It is a continuum.
Yes.
For instance, when Narasimha government had to go out of office and a Janata government came to power under Mr. Devegowda ji, firstly, it is a coalition government. It is not a single party government. And there were communists, there was Janata Party supported by the Congress. So each political coalition partner had his own small little sub-agenda within the economic reforms.
That's right.
Whether you work with a single party government or a multiple party government, my job was to ensure that unity of message is always maintained. It was extremely difficult under a coalition government when they speak in different voices.
That's right. I can totally hear you. You know, we working with 4 different prime ministers from 4 different parties. Yeah, that could be a tough job. Earlier during our discussion, you had mentioned about your collaboration with Apple. What was that? Could you please tell us that story?
Technology of media suddenly changed after the Gulf War of 1990. In fact, first time the cable television came to India with the Gulf War, that is between Iraq and Kuwait. And when it came, there was no regulatory mechanism in the country. In fact, cables were strung across trees and rooftops because they were not supposed to cross the road under the law.
That's right.
It was the ancient 100-year-old law that prohibited anybody from drawing a cable on the ground. Therefore, the Indian entrepreneurship was so great, they devised an entirely new method where they drew the cables across rooftops and trees. And when the cable television came, the first time the Indian audiences were exposed to international media.
Okay.
Until then, the media was totally controlled by the government. The television and radio were owned by the government. Entirely new technologies in terms of print media, in terms of television media. And Indian media, including the printing presses, they did not have what is known as camera-equipped printing presses.
Oh, okay.
And computerization was at its just not known. There are tremendous opposition to introduction of computers.
Okay. What year was that roughly?
This was between 1989, 91, 92, 93, like that.
Okay.
I joined up with a company that was selling Apple computer. Apple was selling in those days what is known as the Apple Classic. It was 64 MB. That was the biggest computer.
That is interesting, isn't it?
I wish I had kept one of those computers today. It would have earned me a lot of money.
Definitely. And there are a lot of people out there who like antiques.
Yes.
So that would have definitely gone for a good price.
And it was a very iconic model.
Yeah.
Apple had brought out, along with the CPU, a small little computer. Collaborated with this company, took them to various regional places where newspapers were published, started introducing the small and medium newspapers and their owners to the new technologies. That is how many of the language newspapers adopted computers into their editorial system.
Wow.
And I was heading the advertising agency of the Government of India known as the DAVP. The first time an Apple computer came with color, and I want to introduce that into our creative department, which is known as the studio. And none of the people in the studio wanted to touch it because the entire advertising artwork was done by hand.
Oh, so they were worried that they were going to lose their jobs? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
One, those who are in the business of typing and other things, they were worried. People who there were no photocopiers, and it should be known as gestetners.
Okay.
I don't know whether you know about it.
I'm not sure I know about that.
It is known as Roneo machines.
Okay.
And all those who are Roneoing or copying it, they were all afraid that once the copiers comes, their job will go away.
Right.
Then those who are typing, they thought, since they were doing it on a typewriter, computer comes, their jobs will go away.
Right.
Then in the studio, many of them were not familiar with the computers at all. Even when I put trainers to train them, they would not undertake the training program.
Okay.
So I had to bypass the whole system.
Oh, okay.
So one of the things I did was, during the summer holidays for the school children, I asked all the employees to bring their kids to the office.
Oh, what a great idea.
Then I made this computer company along with trainers to come and train them in how to paint on the computers, draw.
Wow.
Then once they started coming, their mothers also, I said, they're also encouraged to come. And I organized a 2-week program and gave the children every day food. Coca-Cola was something new. And at the end of it, I gave them certificates.
Wonderful.
And once the children started doing that, the parents got interested in computers.
That is really an interesting story, you know, because maybe there was some kind of fear, like you said, in their minds, like, can we handle the computers? Can we really understand the computers? But once they saw their kids doing it, they were like, okay, then we have to do it. You know, that was maybe like a motivation for them.
Yes. There are one more interesting sideline. Many of them were moonlighting, even while working in the government.
Yes.
Once they became familiar with the color computers, so allowed them to moonlight so that they become more experienced.
Okay.
I did not prevent them.
Okay.
So they became very familiar with the computers.
Okay.
When the resistance was broken,
Right.
next year all of them said, we want more of these color computers.
That's very wonderful. Is this your first visit to Brahma Kumaris, or have you been here before?
No, this is my first visit.
Okay.
And I'm really impressed by the way they are trying to do the advocacy for value-based education through the media, through the various other channels. In fact, I have been engaged in what is known as public service advertising,
Okay.
then advocacy programs, etc., etc.
Okay.
And what really amazes me is the scale at which are taking the value-based education, not only to the children, but to various sections of society.
Absolutely.
Various opinion makers.
Absolutely. Through the different wings. They have like 18 wings.
Oh,
Yeah.
it is on a magnificent scale they are doing it.
Yes.
And at one time the government, when the media was not opened up, was extraordinarily keen to project India, to build an image. But the government was not successful. But today what I find is, on its own, India's image is built up through the India's soft power. And Brahma Kumaris' endeavor is part of that.
That's really good to know that you had such a positive experience here. Did you get a chance to learn the Rajyoga Meditation by any chance?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I attended 2 sessions and I would like to come back again.
Wonderful.
And imbibe more of that. It is a very step-by-step approach for you to cool down and empty your mind and remove all the storms inside you and be at peace with yourself and with your Creator. That is an amazing experience. And very often all of us go through various programs for stress management, etc. Here it is not stress management. It is drying out the stress inside you.
I'm sure, I know we look forward to having you back here at the Brahma Kumaris Center, and also back to our Godlywood studio. You know, anytime you get an opportunity to come back, we are very pleased to have you back here. What will your message when you go back, since this is your first trip here, when you go back to your family and friends, what will your message be to them in terms of the organization?
Well, one of the things my concern is, very often we try to label organizations with religious stamps, our own stereotyping. Here what I find is, here is a program that is almost universally appealing, and more people should partake of this. Get out of stereotyping. For instance, today, yoga until very recently used to be acquire a label in India, whereas abroad it is extraordinarily popular, and we Indians ourselves were not taking to it in a very big way.
Right.
And the moment you call it Raja Yoga, the meaning of this is very often not very well understood. And until they come here and experience this, they don't know the power of this Raja Yoga.
Right, right. You know, in your experience, since you have a lot of experience in this field, how would you say, how did India open up the media?
It's been a very interesting journey, somewhat hiccupy in parts. When we initially wanted to open up the media, that was in 1991-92.
Okay.
The media itself did not want to open itself out to globalization. Then there was political opposition. Essentially, the fear was that the foreign media will come and take over.
Okay.
But very interestingly, the government of Prime Minister Narasimha Rao, without much fanfare, loosened up some of the governmental controls here and there.
Okay.
For instance, foreign news agencies were not allowed to come and sell even economic news gathering and economic news to India. So when the economy opened up, our main anxiety was, how does India's opening up can be exposed to the external world? How do we market it?
Right.
Various road shows were held. Still the response was not as good.
Okay.
The moment we opened up the foreign media to come and cover whatever is happening in India and also sell economic news, our own people started looking at the globe and the global economic developments.
So there was like a cultural exchange,
it was
exchange of ideas.
Yeah. And also the new media technologies came in all of a sudden into the new media. Once the media started absorbing the foreign news, as well as when Indian news started going abroad, there are a lot more coverage of whatever happening was India without much of an official effort. Spontaneously news spread that we are opening up. Initial opposition of the language media gradually subsided. They started reporting economic news in the front pages.
Okay, that was a good development.
Yes. Publishing any economic news related to only the government policy announcements and the government companies. Even the private companies' names were not supposed to be mentioned in the official media channels.
Okay.
So some of these mental blocks in reporting that went out of the window. Now, Indian media itself has globalized on its own. And at one time, there was a complaint that most of the information flow was from the west to the east and north to the south. Once we opened up on its own, the cross flow has increased and more of the internal news is going international. This was one of the great positives that came out of India's economic liberalization program.
So we came out of our shell, so as to speak.
Of course. In those days, we only had one channel, that was the government Doordarshan. Then All India Radio. It depends on how much you want to pay. You can even get 1,000 channels.
Right.
And there are 400 to 500 news channels themselves.
Right. So this, was there any downside to this?
There are a lot of fears thinking that the foreign news will dominate, the foreign ownership will dominate, they will influence Indian politics, Indian economic reforms, etc. But in a globalized world, you can't only integrate the economy. Even the information has to be integrated. The news has to be integrated. I don't see much of a downside to this.
Okay.
In fact, whatever has occurred is positives. In fact, Indians are becoming globalized citizens thanks to the Indian media, not because of foreign media. And no foreign media has taken over the Indian media. There are Indian media barons today.
Right. We are having a wonderful conversation, but for lack of time, we have the time constraints. We will have to conclude this, but I would definitely, on behalf of Brahmakumaris, welcome you to come back again and spend some time here, leisurely, because now you have come to attend a conference, but when you come here just to take some time out of your life and be here, I'm sure that will make a big difference as well. So thank you for coming and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Certainly, I will take that postage check. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Our special guest today, Mr. Narendra, shared with us that from very early on in his life, he has been interested in having media for the betterment of the country. During some crucial times when he was a communications advisor to the then PM Narasimha Rao, he introduced some economic reforms that brought about a change in the economic situation. He has always been interested in value-based education in media. And he also expressed that he is extremely pleased that Brahma Kumari is playing a very big role in improving the soft skills in not just the media, but in the people in general. and the soft skills he explained, such as values, communications, and a way of life. We are so pleased to have you as our viewers today. Thanks for watching us. Om Shanti.